So my session is talking about the impact of Agile and the effect of it changes people, not just the people doing Agile, but the people on the receiving end of Agile. So people are what always make life very interesting, because unlike sort of construction and bricks and mortar, they are all different, and they're all different day to day. So I'm not going to stay on this one for long, but basically my background, as Alice said, is all about the complex corporate world, because that's the interesting side of Agile. And when you're trying to do transformation for long established companies with a mix of newcomers and people that have been there 20 plus years, it's the people that makes my job as an Agile coach, transformation coach, interesting in itself. So people are absolutely key to successful Agile. And if you look at the Agile Manifesto, as created in 2001, and I was with the DSM consortium since 1994, and we always disagreed slightly with the Agile Manifesto, because we always said it's about solutions, not software. But provided we change solutions to software, changed from software to solutions, it makes more sense. But if you look at the Agile Manifesto, the first line in the Agile Manifesto says we value individuals and interactions above processes and tools. In other words, this is the top priority for Agile, because successful Agile relies on basically developing people to be the best they can possibly be, and then building good relationships within the organization, not just at the team level, although we need effective teams, but also making sure the style of leadership is the one we need, which is a facilitative relationship, building the communication between the teams, the managers, the senior leaders. And to make this effective, all of our behaviors should be based around the Agile values and behaviors. These aren't just solely for Agile. I mean, these would define any good team, whether it's a sports team or a work team. So the first value we look at is this idea of courage. If you're working within a team, you need everybody within the courage not to be a lemming and jump off the cliff, but if you're unhappy about something, to flag up and say, I don't know, that doesn't feel right. Most of us, if you've been working a while, have been in a planning session where you're presented with somebody else's plan, which you're supposed to deliver. And you sit there thinking, that's never going to work. And it's a case of, have you got the courage to stand up and say, I don't agree with the plan. There's a problem with this. So it takes courage to stand out and disagree. I mean, not necessarily, you don't have to be rude about it, but just to express the fact that you're not aligned, or you don't understand, or something feels wrong. And you even get this with people hesitant to ask the first question. So hopefully already Alice is going to be bombarded with questions for later. The second thing we look for in a team is this concept of commitment. So if you're involved in creating something, you can fully commit to it. If you're not involved in creating something, but it's just given to you, it's different, because it doesn't feel like yours. So what we look for in Agile is that you're involved with the planning. Planning is a collaborative process, not something handed down from a project manager. Estimating is a collaborative process. It's not something where an expert estimates and then hands down to a team that's much more inexperienced to deliver the same estimates. So what I look for when I'm coaching is, with these collaborative sessions, at the end of the sessions, it becomes our plan or our estimate. You want ownership, because if you own something, then you put more effort, you're more committed to trying to make sure you deliver it. So there's real ownership. If I fail on somebody else's plan, I've almost always got an excuse. Well, I didn't write the plan. If it's my plan, it becomes personal. And that's what we want. We want the work we're doing to be very personal. That's what you look for in an Agile team. We want people to focus. So one of the things I've seen over many years is the problem where teams are working to different goals. And what we need is that the team have the same shared goal. I've done quite a lot of sports coaching as well. And one of the key things, if you're coaching small children, I've coached small children to play football. And it's getting a team of sort of 5, 6, 7-year-olds to understand that the point is that we win as a team, not that little Freddie scores 20 goals and in the meantime we let 50 in at the other end. It's having the shared goals, shared objectives, so that everybody is focusing on the same result. So what I look for is that the team are totally committed and the goal is that we succeed or fail as a team. So we need to start thinking about how we encourage that, how we build the team culture so that people are happy and willing to help others, sometimes to the detriment of their own work, because that's what needs to do. You can't have one person in a team succeeding and the rest fail. Basically, that means we've all failed. So when I'm coaching, I often say to people, I don't care whose fault it is, just get in there and sort it out. Because as a team, we have to sort this out as a team. It doesn't matter whether somebody made a mistake, we just sort it out. And if you've got clear goals, clear objectives, that helps you focus. It helps you prioritize what's important today, what won't be done today but could be done later. What are our must priorities for the next 24 hours? So this focus gives us this ability to really make sure the team are all going in the same direction. And on a good day, it's easy. On a bad day, or with a new team, or with a team with problems, it can be like trying to organize wild horses. So setting clear objectives, agreeing clear goals up front makes a big difference. And for Agile to be effective, we really, really need it to be an open environment. One of Agile's fundamental 3 concepts is the concept of transparency. So transparency is only going to work where people are happy and willing to share information. So it's not just about talking either. If we have openness, we want people to be talking, yes, but we also want them to be listening. We want them to be thinking about what's being said or what's going on, understanding what the options are. So really, really important that you don't come in with a fixed idea of what the solution is. If you're going into a workshop to talk something through, it's not coming in and just presenting your idea and then switching off. It's about learning from other people, learning that there might be 2 ways of doing something and one might be better than the other. There might be 2 ways of doing it because there are 2 completely different needs and we have to cater for both. If we don't listen, we don't learn. And I always say that, I've been doing Agile since, well, before it was created. So even before RAB was invented, I've always worked this way. And I am sort of getting on in my career these days, but I'm still learning. I'm learning all the time. I learn from other people that I work with. I learn from other people that I'm coaching. So what we need is to show flexibility. We need to accept that the world is changing and we're going to have to change with it. And this is what we often talk about, this concept of an agile mindset. Agile is not following a book. Agile is not saying, well, it says in the Scrum Guide you must do this and you're not doing it, so therefore you're not agile. And it's nothing to do with experience or age. I'm representing the older generation in Agile, and I've met people who are 100 who have a very, very agile mindset, and I've met people of 15 or 20 who are so closed they're not open to new ideas. So we want this openness, we want this transparency, we want this willingness to share information, because in an Agile project, because everything's going on so fast, we need to constantly have a finger on the pulse of what's happening. And in order to do that easily, we want to be confident that people will tell us if they've got a problem. If we don't have that, then it becomes very difficult. And then the 5th Agile value we have is this idea of respect. So I like this. I'm assuming the small child is probably going to throw the master because he's very skilled. Respect is really important within a team, because if you don't have that respect, then you won't get the openness, you won't get the sharing of information. So for me, when I'm coaching, a lot of what I do is about understanding the team, but also helping the team understand one another, who brings what, because we're all different. And for example, I know that I'm not the creative person. That isn't my skill. I'm very good at team stuff. I'm good at communication. But if you want creative ideas, then look to somebody else. So part of respect is getting people to understand who does what, who brings what, but also understanding yourself, what you bring, and what you need other people to help you with. Because a good team doesn't mean that you can do everything. It means that within the team, you've got all the skills, all the knowledge you need to get a successful solution. So it's respecting different opinions, respecting different viewpoints, understanding with split site working, it's sometimes understanding different cultures, different ways of communication. And it's up to the team, and particularly any leaders of the team, so Scrum Masters, team leaders, and, for example, facilitative project managers, to make sure that the team are working in a respectful way, establishing the behaviours that people feel comfortable to say, I don't agree with that. If I can just explain why I think it's different. If we get all of these values working, so we get the courage, we get the commitment, we get the focus, openness, and respect, that's what gives us a really good team. If we then look at the people, again, Agile puts a huge emphasis on team working. That is what makes Agile work well. Historically, if you look at traditional styles of working, the sort of linear style of working, you're much more likely to be working in a silo, where if you're a developer, you get stuff to develop and you develop it and then you hand it over to the testers. If you're a designer, you get stuff from the analysts, you do the design and you hand it over to the developers. But the culture of team, the emphasis on team wasn't as high. In Agile, the emphasis on team is above everything else. It's a team-based approach. So if Agile is going to work effectively, we need team members to work together, because without that, we don't have a successful solution on the way. So variety of skill sets, different styles of personality, but shared goals, shared ways of working. And we also talk about this concept of getting the right sort of people. So what I look for when I'm coaching, but also when I was recruiting, was this concept of T-shaped people. And that is, I want people that are good at their particular skill. That's vital. But what I also want is people who understand how their skill fits into working with other people. So the disciplinary skill, the functional skill in your own discipline, is the bottom part of the T. The bit across the top, the arms, is the ability to apply what you know as a subject matter expert to what other people bring to the team and how you can fit in with them and how they can fit in with you. Because that's key. In Agile, siloed thinking, siloed people, I'm a developer, that's the most important thing of all, or I'm a project manager, I rule the world, doesn't work in Agile. Agile is a flat structure. If you do lead, you're a servant leader, not a command and control leader. So having the right sort of people is really important. You can't always choose. Quite often you're given, the team's what you're given, but at least understanding what you've got and working with it is really important. So one of the other key factors of Agile is this concept of empowerment. Empowerment is basically letting the people that know what they're doing get on and do a good job. So it's important to understand how it works and why we do it. And what we're looking for with empowerment is not this. So empowerment has to be two-sided. So it's not a hierarchical thing of just handing things down, but keeping control, which is a bit like the one on the left. And it's not like the picture on the right, where you're trying to hand over empowerment, but the person you're handing it over to isn't ready, isn't listening, or isn't in the right place. What we look for with empowerment is much more, if you like, handing over a key, opening a door. So the best description I can give of empowerment is it's like a handshake. I mean, empowerment is handed down to a team, to individuals from above. So as a group manager, I empowered my team to get on and do a good job. I had confidence in them, they knew what they were doing, but there were bounds. You can't do whatever you want. So when you're empowered, you get some fun out of it, you get some enjoyment because you can really be good at your job. But you need to understand that with that comes responsibility. You can't have one without the other. So I'm going to make decisions based on my level of empowerment and I make the best decisions I can at that point in time with what I know. Retrospectively, I might have made different choices, but hey, I didn't know then what I know now. But if we use empowerment effectively, we also need to be very clear what the boundaries are. I had a debate recently and somebody was flagging up that you wouldn't empower a team of junior doctors to do open heart surgery. And you think, well, of course you wouldn't, because you don't have the skills to do it. So with empowerment, you empower people who have the skills to do the job you want them to do. You wouldn't empower a 2-year-old to walk to play school on their own in London, for example. It would make no sense. But if people have the right skills, you explain what the boundaries are. For example, if you're a developer, one of the boundaries is you can't bring in this really neat piece of software you got free with a magazine at the weekend, install it on the corporate network and start using it. You can't break the corporate standards for development, for testing. These are things you can't do. But within the bounds of your empowerment, you are empowered to make the best decision you can to get the best solution out of the door. And to be honest, it's extremely motivating. Because for me, a good process is not a ceiling, it's a safety net to help people who are less able, but it still allows brilliant people to fly. And what I see with empowerment is I see brilliant people flying. That to me is a really good process. But there are two sides to empowerment, and you need to understand there are benefits and risks on both sides, both as a member of the team and as a manager. So as a member of a team, the benefits are huge motivation. The majority of people thrive on being empowered. And because you're empowered, you're more committed to delivering, which in itself gives you a higher job satisfaction and has proved, and I've seen this in practice over a number of years, that giving people this responsibility is actually very motivating, and it has led to increased staff retention, for example. The risks to this is that not everybody wants this. So I was coaching a team a couple of years ago, and there was one guy who was very good, and we talked about empowerment, and he just said, Barbara, to be perfectly honest, I'm not interested. He said, I've been here too long, so I come in, I want to do my job, go home, don't want promotion, don't want any stress, just want to come in, work and go home. And that was a bit like the trying to hand over the baton to somebody that's not ready. This guy just got his arms folded, he wasn't interested, and we had to work around that. But in my experience, most people thrive on it. But we do need to be very, very clear what the boundaries are. Because it's unsettling when you talk to senior managers about empowerment. They think it's just opening up the floodgates to anybody doing everything they want and no control. And actually, it's not like that. It's quite disciplined. From the management side, benefits are we get faster decisions, because we've got the people who actually understand on the ground what this means, making the decisions without constantly referring back up the food chain. We get high quality decisions because they're based on first-hand knowledge of people having an open discussion rather than asking somebody to ask somebody else to get a decision. We talk to one another. And from a management point of view, the value of having motivated staff is huge. We make the most of the capabilities people have. And as I said, it does lead often to better staff retention. And quite often, managers don't always realize what skilled people they've got because we don't always appreciate those skills. So many years ago, when I was a team manager, I was given a particular person and I was told, oh, you could have him because, to be honest, he's not a very good developer. Well, he wasn't. He was an average developer, but he was an absolutely brilliant communicator, and he became one of my best facilitators. So it's understanding what skills people have got, and it's not always about the skills you've learnt. It may be the inherent skills that sometimes you can't teach. For example, it's very difficult to teach communication. So it's about getting the best out of people, motivating them, and getting them to enjoy the work they do. So the job satisfaction and the staff retention are very closely related. But if we do change the way we do things, as we move towards Agile, there's a huge effect on stakeholders because they're going to start to see things differently to what they're used to. So you get the sort of Macaulay Culkin horrified face from some senior managers when you start showing them a different way of planning or a different way of reporting. It can be a bit of a shock to them. So, for example, if we look at planning, we approach planning differently. So traditionally, people were used to creating these dramatic, well, I find them horrifying Gantt charts. In a linear process, you produce these detailed Gantt charts with all the dependencies, and it would tell me that in 2 months' time on Tuesday afternoon, apparently I'm going to be doing something in the morning. And what these detailed plans do is they give you a strong impression of confidence and certainty in a world that's static. And the world isn't like that anymore. I would say one of the positive things about COVID is it's taught people that creating this sort of detailed plan and even laminating it is a complete waste of time, because life has a habit of getting in the way. It's a technical term, it's called stuff happens, because it does. So what's happened over many years is that people have provided a lot of detail to senior management, and that seems to make people feel a lot more confident in the plan and believe that the future is predictable. And the reality is that this impression is often, or I would say usually, misguided, and it implies that change isn't expected. That is not the 21st century world. Change is a fact of life, not an unpleasant thing that we try and avoid. If we plan in Agile, this is photographs taken actually from a Nokia planning session in Finland, and we were planning the next 3 trains, which was 36 weeks worth of work. And it's done very fluidly with very visual stuff, and we'd move stuff around big walls, and eventually we'd end up with a plan that we agreed with, but it's done as a collaborative style. So it's not about fitting stuff into Gantt charts, it's about moving it around on the walls till we've got a flow and a groupings and timings that we think will actually work. What we want to do in Agile is make this information highly visible. One of the lovely comments in the global digital strategy that gov.uk introduced was "go see for yourself." Another one I like is "don't make me think." But what we need to do is make information available so anybody that wants to see the plan can see it. Anybody that wants to see where we are can see it without having to go and ask for a progress report. And we update the plans regularly, so our plans always reflect reality. They're not something that's out of date. Typically, we will update the lowest level of plan every 24 hours. But certainly every 2 to 3 weeks, we would get an objective update based on what we've achieved. So we constantly adjust our plans to show how we get from here to the end goal. So planning in Agile is very different to traditional planning. Traditional planning is a railway journey. You plan very predictable, linear style of planning. Agile is a sailing journey. We know where we're going from, we know we're going to, but we constantly have to adapt because stuff happens. Currents, sails, tides, bad weather can affect us. Agile is exactly the same. Reporting we do differently. So in a traditional project, because of the style of analysis, design, code, build, test, user acceptance test, we've got very long periods where we've got no proof available. So in effect, it's like looking into a black hole. And what that means is that the style of reporting is driven by lack of knowledge. And therefore, we had to do this percentage complete, which was the only option we had. The reality is that that is quite often presented optimistically, hoping it will all come good in the end, because we were always hopeful until 5 minutes to midnight that all the problems would go away, and trust me, they never did. By comparison, Agile planning is based on an iterative, incremental approach and transparency. So regular demos, show and tells, ongoing acceptance. Progress is objective. So it's measured on completed work, and done is binary. Half done has no value at all. So from a team member point of view, when we move to transparency, what we're moving from is this, as a team member on a traditional project, you're fairly camouflaged. In an agile project, you're very much front of stage. You're in the spotlight, and it can be unsettling. From a management point of view, we're moving from, this is a lovely expression I learned from the guys when I was working in Australia. They were talking about watermelon projects. And I said, sorry, I've not seen that. What's a watermelon project? They said, green on the outside, red on the inside. And I think anybody that's been working for a while will have seen projects that report green when they should be red. The problem with Agile is you can't report green if it's red. If it's red, you have to show. Which leads me into my final slide, my final quote. I love this because this to me describes exactly how transparency feels. And I've come across this. People say, Barbara, why do your Agile projects flag red? Nobody else's. I said, because mine are honest. So this was a lovely quote I saw. You're sitting in a dark room. So imagine you're sitting in this completely dark room. You can't see anything. The room's full of tigers, but it's still dark. I put the lights on. Please don't blame me or Agile for the tigers. Agile will expose things that previously you were able to ignore. Okay, that's my presentation done. Alice, over to you.
Thank you, Barbara. I love that final quote, and particularly that, your message of we are all different and we must play to our strengths. So please do drop some questions in the chat. We've got a couple of minutes. I've got one come in, Barbara. How do we continue to build our team mentality in a virtual environment when sometimes teams haven't met in person?
It's always better if you can meet in person. But, if you're working split sites, you always used to hope to get together to build a team. But if you haven't, you've got to find ways to share, ways to communicate. When we were working with offshore, we were often getting invites, for example, to somebody's wedding celebration, and we used to get them to send us photographs of cakes or samosas or something to share, and we'd send back sort of photographs of what we were doing. So if you want to make it work, build something around non-work sharing, just so you understand people better, even getting together for a virtual coffee break. But also bearing in mind that if you've got split time zones, make it work. So I did a project where we had everything from the States through to Australia. So we got the worst possible split of time zones. And what we did there was we did one day our daily stand-up, our daily scrum was done to suit America. And the next day it was done to suit Australia, so that it was basically the Australians used to come alternate days and the Americans used to come alternate days. So think about the difficulties of communicating and, be sympathetic about people's time zones, but do some non-work sharing to try and build the relationships.